Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you are joining me. I am so excited that you are here, and we are going to continue reading To Terabithia together. We are actually almost done with this book. We really just have that much more, so not a whole lot left to read. My goal is to finish this before summer, so hopefully we will get there. But for today, we are on chapter 8. So if you have your book, go ahead, grab it, turn to page 78, and we will go ahead and get started. All right, so chapter 8, which is called Easter. Even though it was nearly Easter, there were still a few nights that were warm enough to leave Miss Bessie out. And then there was the rain. All March it poured. For the first time in many years, the creek bed held water. Not just a trickle either, enough so that when they swung across, it was a little scary looking down at the rushing water below. Jess took Prince Terran outside in his jacket, and the puppy was growing so fast that he might pop the zipper at any time and fall into the water and drown. Ellie and Brenda were already fighting about what they were going to wear to church. Since Mama got mad at the preacher 3 years back, Easter was the only time that the Aarons went to church, and it was a big deal. His mama always cried poor, but put a lot of thought and as much money as she could scrape together to make sure she wasn't embarrassed by how her family looked. But the day before, she planned to take them all over to Millsburg Plaza for some new clothes. His dad came in from Washington early. He had been laid off. No new clothes this year. A wail went from Ellie and Brenda like two sirens going to a fire. "You can't make me go to church," Brenda said. "I ain't got nothing to wear and you know it." "Just 'cause you're fat," Maybelle muttered. "Did you hear what she said, Mama? I'm gonna kill that kid." "Brenda, will you shut your mouth?" his mother said sharply. And then, more wearily, "We got a lot more than Easter clothes to worry about." His dad got up noisily and poured himself a cup of black coffee from the pot on the back of the stove. "Why can't we just charge things?" Ellie said. Brenda burst in. "Did you know that some people, they charge something and wear it and then take it back and say it didn't fit or something? The stores don't give them no trouble at all." His father turned in kind of a roar. "I've never heard such a fool thing in my life. Didn't you hear your mother? She said to shut your mouth, girl." Brenda stopped talking. But she popped her gum so loudly just to prove that she wasn't going to be put down. Jess was glad to escape to the shed in the complacent company of Miss Bessie. There was a knock. "Jess?" "Leslie, come on in." She looked first and then sat on the floor near her stool. "What's new?" "Lord, don't ask." He tugged on the teats in a rhythm and listened to the plink, plink, plink in the bottom of the pail. "That bad, huh?" "My dad got laid off, and Brenda and Ellie are fit to fry 'cause they ain't got new clothes for Easter." "Gee, I'm sorry about your dad, I mean." Jess grinned. "Yeah, I ain't too worried about those girls. If I know them, they'll trick new clothes out of somebody. It would make you throw up to see how these girls make a spectacle of themselves in church." "I never knew you went to church." "Just Easter." He concentrated on the warm udders. "I guess you think it's dumb or something." She didn't answer for a minute. "I was thinking I'd like to go." He stopped milking. "I don't understand you sometimes, Leslie." "Well, I've never been to church before. It would be a new experience for me." He went back to work. "You'd hate it." "Why?" "It's boring." "Well, I'd like to see for myself. Do you think your parents will let me go with you?" "You can't wear pants." "I've got dresses, Jess Aarons. Would wonders never cease?" "Here, open your mouth." "Why?" "Just open your mouth." For once, she obeyed. He sent a stream of warm milk straight into it. "Jess Aarons!" The name garbled and the milk dribbled down her chin as she spoke. "Don't open your mouth now. You're wasting good milk." Leslie started to giggle, choked, and coughed. "Now, if I could just learn to pitch a baseball that straight. Let me try again." Leslie controlled her giggle, closed her eyes, and solemnly opened her mouth. But now Jess was giggling, so he couldn't keep his hand steady. "You dunce, you hit me right in the ear." Leslie hunched her shoulder and rubbed her ear on her sleeve of her sweatshirt. She collapsed into giggles again. "I'd be obliged if you'd finished milking and come back to the house." His dad was standing right in the doorway. "I guess I'd better go," Leslie said quietly. She got up and went to the door. "Excuse me." His dad moved aside to let her pass. Jess waited for him to say something more, but he just stood there for a few minutes and then turned and went out. Ellie said that she would go to church if Mama would let her wear a see-through blouse, and Brenda would go if she could at least get a new skirt. In the end, everyone got something new except Jess and his dad, neither of whom cared, but Jess got the idea that they might give him a little bargaining power with his mother later on. "Since I ain't got nothing new, could Leslie go with us?" That girl? He could see his mother rooting around in her head for a good reason to say no. She doesn't dress right. "Mama," he said in a voice that sounded kind of prissy like Ellie's, "Leslie's got dresses. She's got hundreds of them." His mother's face dropped. She bit the outside of her bottom lip in the way Joyce Ann sometimes does, and spoke softly so that only Jess could hear her. "I don't want no one poking up their nose at my family." Jess wanted to put his arm around her the way he had put it around Maybelle when she needed comfort. "She don't poke her nose up at you, Mama, honest." His mother sighed. "Well, if she'll look decent." Leslie looked decent. Her hair was slicked down and she wore a navy blue jumper over a blouse with tiny old-fashioned looking flowers. At the bottom of her red knee socks were a pair of shiny brown leather shoes that Jess had never seen before, as Leslie always wore sneakers like the rest of the kids in Lark Creek. Even her manner was decent. Her usual sparkle was toned way down, and she said yes ma'am and no ma'am to his mother, just as though she was aware of Mrs. Aaron's dread of disrespect. Jess knew how hard Leslie must be trying, for Leslie didn't say ma'am naturally. In comparison to Leslie, Brenda and Ellie looked like a pair of peacocks with fake tail feathers. They both insisted on riding in the front of the pickup with their parents, which was kind of a squeeze with Brenda's shape to consider. Jess and Leslie and the little girls climbed happily into the back and sat down in the old sacks his dad had put against the cab. The sun wasn't exactly shining, but it was the first day in a long time that the rain wasn't actually coming down, that they sang "Oh Lord, what a morning," and "Ah, lovely meadows," and sing a song that Miss Edmonds had taught them, and even Jingle Bells for Joyce Ann. The wind carried their voices away from them and made the music seem mysterious, which filled Jess with a feeling of power over the hills rolling behind the back of the truck. The ride was much too short, especially for Joyce Ann, who began to cry because the arrival interrupted the first verse of "Santa Claus is Coming to Town," which, after Jingle Bells, was her favorite. Jess tickled her into giggling again, so that when the four of them clambered down the tailgate, they were flush-faced and happy once more. They were a little late, which didn't bother Ellie and Brenda, for that meant they got to flounce down the entire length of the aisle to the first pew, making sure that every eye in the church was on them, and every expression of every eye was a jealous one. Lord, they were disgusting. And his mother had been so scared that Leslie might embarrass her. Jess hunched his shoulders and slunk into the pew after the string of woman folks just before his father. Church always seemed the same. Jess could tune out the same way he had tuned out school, and his body standing up and sitting down in unison with the rest of the congregation, but his mind numb and floating, not really thinking or dreaming, but at least free. Once or twice he was aware of being on his feet with the loud, not really tuneful singing around him. At the edge of his consciousness he could hear Leslie singing along and drowsily wondered why she bothered. The preacher had one of those tricky voices. It would buzz along for several minutes quite comfortably, then bang, he was screaming at you. Each time Jess would jump, and it would take another couple of minutes for him to relax again, because he wasn't really listening to the words. The man's red face with sweat pouring down seemed strangely out of place in this dull sanctuary. It was like Brenda throwing a tantrum over Joyce Ann touching her lipstick. It took a while to get Ellie and Brenda pulled away from the front yard of the church. Jess and Leslie went ahead and put the little girls in the back and settled down to wait. "Gee, I'm glad I came." Jess turned to Leslie in unbelief. "It was better than a movie." "You're kidding." "No, I'm not." And she wasn't. He could tell by her face. "That whole Jesus thing is really interesting, isn't it?" "What do you mean?" "All those people wanting to kill him when he hadn't done anything to hurt him?" She hesitated. "It's really kind of a beautiful story." "It ain't beautiful," Maybelle broke in. "It's scary." "Nailing holes right through someone's hand?" Maybelle was right. Jess reached into the deeps of pit of his mind. "It's because we're all vile sinners. God made Jesus die." "Do you think that's true?" He was shocked. "It's in the Bible, Leslie." She looked at him as if she was going to argue, and then seemed to change her mind. It's crazy, isn't it? She shook her head. You have to believe, but you hate it. I don't have to believe, and I think it's beautiful. She shook her head again. It's crazy. Mabel had her eyes all squinched as though Leslie was a strange creature in the zoo. You gotta believe in the Bible, Leslie. Why? It was a genuine question. Leslie wasn't being smart. 'Cause if you don't believe, Mabel's eyes were huge, then God won't take you to heaven when you die. Where would she heard a thing like that? Leslie turned to Jess, as though she was about to accuse him of something wrong he had committed against his sister. He felt hot and caught her voice and words. He dropped his gaze at the gunny sack and began to fiddle with the raveled edge. That's right, Jess, ain't it? Mabel's shrill voice demanded. God will not take you to heaven if you don't believe in the Bible. Jess pushed his hair out of his face. I reckon, he muttered. I don't believe it, Leslie said. I don't even think you've read the Bible. I read most of it, Jess said, still fingering the sack. It's about the only book we got around our place. He looked up to Leslie, half-grinned. She smiled. Okay, she said, but I don't think God is going to go around not taking people to heaven. They smiled at each other and tried to ignore Mabel's anxious little voice. But Leslie, she insisted, what if you die? What's going to happen if you die? All right, that is the end of chapter 8. I will post chapter 9 as soon as I can, but I hope that you are enjoying this book as much as I am, and I will see you next time.